Welcome back to The Road Chose Me. On today's episode, a topic I get asked all of the time: why do I drive Jeeps around the world? With my accent, with the passports I have in my pocket, it would be pretty easy for me to fly anywhere in the world and buy one of those coveted four-wheel drives, but instead, I choose to drive Jeeps. Why do I do that? What are those reasons? Stick around, I'm going to get into the top 5 right now. So reason number 5 that I choose to drive Jeeps around the world simply comes down to the amount of bang that you get for your buck. So if we rewind a little bit, before I set out to drive 40,000 miles from Alaska to Argentina, I spent $5,000 on this little Jeep Wrangler. And this little thing was amazing. Remember, it has high and low range four-wheel drive, it has solid front and rear axles, and that transfer case, that's manual shift. That's not electronic. So this is a real deal four-wheel drive, and it cost me $5,000. It was only 8 years old at the time. It had about 60,000 miles on the clock. And so I drove that thing all the way from the top of Alaska to the bottom of Argentina. Let me say that again, $5,000. I want you to go out and find a better vehicle that's more capable for $5,000. I don't think it exists. And then following up from that, I bought this thing. Again, it was only 5 years old when I bought it. It had 60,000 miles on the clock, and I paid $18,000. That's it. This is a 4-door Rubicon. This has factory front and rear lockers. This has a low range transfer case, and it has a sway bar disconnect on the front. This is the most capable four-wheel drive that you can buy from the factory, and I paid $18,000 for it. That's it. So I drove this thing all the way around Africa. I had all of those adventures, and it didn't break the bank. I didn't have to spend years paying off borrowed money. I was able to get out on the road and have adventures sooner. So right there, that makes it a fantastic choice. You get this massive capability, but you don't have to spend a massive amount of money. Right there, that's one of the reasons I love driving Jeeps around the world. Reason number 4 that I chose to drive Jeeps around the world is simply the sheer volume of these things that exist. So I know when you're outside North America, it's hard to imagine, but they built nearly 2.2 million of these things in just 12 years. So let me be clear on that. I don't mean Wranglers in general. I mean this model of Wrangler called the JK. It was built from 2006 until 2018. 2.2 million of them. That's 185,000 per year that they build of this exact model. Let me put that into context. The Land Rover Defender ran for 67 years in production, and when they closed down the production line, they just built over 2 million. So in 67 years, they built as many Land Rover Defenders as there are of one model of Jeep Wrangler. Kind of a same story for the Land Cruiser 70 series as well. When we look at all the variants of the 70 series, the pickup truck, the Troopy, all the different ones, they build about 80,000 of them a year. Much less than half as many as they built of this one model of Jeep Wrangler. So what does that mean, having so many of them? It has so many flow-on effects. It means that parts are really cheap and really available. In fact, the brake pads for my Jeep, they cost less than they do for my mountain bike. Whereas my buddy with a Jap import 80 series Land Cruiser, he found out the calipers for that thing cost more than they do for his GT3 Porsche. Land Cruiser parts are rare over here in North America, and they're expensive. Not only are parts much cheaper for the Wrangler simply because there's so many of them, but also you wind up with a ton of support online. So when you want to modify something, like when I wanted to build my kill switch, all I have to do is Google JK Wrangler kill switch, and immediately 10 forum threads pop up with wiring diagrams, helpful information, and how to do it yourself. Same story goes if you ever have trouble or if there's something else you want to modify. There are literally tens of thousands of forum posts on the internet simply because there are so many of these things getting around. So that's reason number 4 that I choose to drive Jeeps around the world. Reason number 3 that I chose to drive Jeeps is because of the availability of aftermarket modifications. Simply because there are so many of these things getting around, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is the world's most modified vehicle in terms of bumpers, suspension, rear tire carriers, even the pop-up roof that I've got on this Jeep. It was specifically made for this model of Jeep Wrangler. So again, I'm not talking about all Wranglers through history. I'm talking about just this specific model. You can buy an unbelievable number of parts. The snorkel, the rear table that I have in my kitchen setup, all of those things are bolt-on for this vehicle. And I know there's other YouTube channels out there that always make fun of bolt-on never turns out to be bolt-on and you have to modify stuff. From experience, I can tell you the quality of aftermarket parts available for this vehicle is unbelievable. I didn't modify a single thing. I didn't have to drill out any holes. I bolted all these modifications on. I hit the road and I drove 54,000 miles around Africa without a single mechanical failure. That's pretty impressive, and yet again, a reason that I choose to drive Jeeps around the world. Reason number 2 that I drive Jeeps around the world comes down to capability and reliability. And we can argue about this until the cows come home. There are plenty of videos on YouTube that show this Rubicon Wrangler versus a Defender versus a Land Cruiser 70 series. And I don't even really think it's a debate. From the factory, this vehicle is so much more capable than all the others. In fact, in one of the videos, the guy doesn't even use the lockers in the Rubicon because that would give it an unfair advantage. So I think, from the amount of flex that this has and the way that it has evolved from an off-road vehicle, this is by far the most capable vehicle you can buy from the factory. Added to that is the reliability. And I know that Jeeps don't have the most amazing kind of reputation for reliability, but I've always dug into that a bit deeper. And what I find is when you look at Jeeps that break or that have reliability troubles, they're the ones where people have put monster truck tires on there and then they go and try and drive through the biggest mud pit they can find or over the biggest rock. And if they make it, they just go and try something even harder. And they're going to keep doing that until something breaks. So by definition, they're setting out to break their vehicle. And it's no surprise, if you try really hard, yeah, you're going to break any vehicle if you keep doing that and if you put monster truck tires on there. But from my experience and other people that I've met and a lot of research online, I've driven over 100,000 miles through 55 countries without a single mechanical failure. That record speaks for itself. So while they don't have the world's best reputation, my experience is these are plenty reliable and without a doubt capable for the kinds of global expeditions that I want to do. So that's reason number 2 that I chose to drive Jeeps around the world. And so reason number 1 that I chose to drive Jeeps around the world, well, I've got a bit of a story to tell you. When I arrived in South Africa, I'd just come down through the Congos, Angola, Mali, Nigeria, all of those countries in Africa. And no doubt about it, I pushed the Wrangler and we had some amazing adventures. And a lot of South Africans, they do explore a lot, but they're a little bit timid of West Africa and it's not somewhere that people commonly go. And so a lot of South Africans, they were really shocked. And they'd say, "You just came from the Congo?" "Yep, I sure did." And they would say, "But man, why did you drive a Jeep?" My answer was always, "Well, you've got to look good doing it." So what do you think? How does my top 5 reasons to drive a Jeep around the world strike you? Do they make sense? Do you disagree with me? Have you got other points that are worth raising? Let me know down in the comments, leave a message, and make sure you hit that subscribe button. Follow along for future videos. I'll walk you all around the Jeep and I'll show you all the lessons that I've learned from driving around the world. So until next time, I'll see you out there.